On Wednesday night in October of 1953, in a small kitchen on the east side of Akron, Ohio, she emptied the change purse onto the table and counted what was inside: 47 cents, 3 dimes, a nickel, and 12 pennies. She moved them into a single line, smallest to largest, the way her mother had taught her to count. Her husband would not be paid until Friday afternoon. He worked the second shift at a rubber plant out on East Market Street, and the union check came in the envelope handed to him at the end of the line on Friday at 4. Between now and then, she had to feed 3 children, keep her husband on his feet through 2 more shifts, and make sure none of them noticed how thin it was getting. She knew exactly what was left in the pantry. She had counted it twice already that day: half a 5-pound bag of flour, 3 eggs, 1 yellow onion, soft at the top, the heel of the loaf from Sunday, a spoon of bacon grease in the small jar by the stove, 2 handfuls of dried navy beans in a glass jar on the shelf, a quart of milk in the icebox with about a third gone, a cup of rolled oats, salt and pepper, coffee grounds she had already used once and dried on a piece of newspaper to use again. That was the whole list. The 47 cents on the table was not going to buy 3 days of food. She knew that. 3 days of food for 5 people, even in 1953, ran closer to $4 than to 50 cents. The 47 cents was bridge money. It would buy the 1 or 2 missing pieces that turned what was already in the pantry into actual meals. A tin of evaporated milk, maybe a pound of potatoes. The smallest possible thing that would make the flour behave like bread, the beans behave like supper, and the bacon grease behave like flavor. She had to decide before morning what to buy first, what to save for Thursday afternoon, and what she would refuse to touch in the pantry until Friday at sunrise. She slid the coins back into the purse and snapped it shut. At 5 o'clock Thursday morning, the house was still dark. The children would not wake for another hour. She was already at the stove. Her husband would be downstairs in 15 minutes, dressed for the rubber plant, smelling of the lye soap he used to scrub the cracks in his hands. He needed something hot in his stomach before he walked the 11 blocks to the gate. She had not spent the 47 cents yet. Whatever he ate this morning had to come from what was already in the house. She started with the bacon grease. The small jar by the stove held a single spoonful of solidified white fat, scraped from the bottom of last week's Sunday skillet. She melted it in a cast-iron pan over a low flame, letting it spread and pool until the bottom of the pan was slick. Then she opened the flour bag and measured out 3 flat tablespoons. She browned the flour in the grease until it turned the color of weak coffee, stirring with a wooden spoon, watching the color so it would not burn. When the flour was the right shade, she added a half cup of milk from the icebox and whisked. It thickened in under a minute. Salt, pepper. That was all. She cut the heel of bread from Sunday's loaf into 2 thick pieces and laid them in the pan to soak up the heat. While the bread warmed, she poured the gravy into a deep bowl. It was not 3 eggs and bacon. It was not a plate of hash. It was flour, fat, and milk, poured hot over bread that was 4 days old. But it was 300 calories of heavy, slow-burning fuel, and it would keep her husband standing through the first 4 hours of his shift. She set the bowl on the table just as he came down the stairs. He ate without saying much. He never said much before a shift. He drank the coffee she had made from the grounds she had dried on newspaper, and he wiped the bowl with the last corner of bread. He picked up the metal lunch pail she had packed the night before, the one that held a single cold biscuit and a small jar of the same gravy for his noon break, and he kissed the top of her head on his way out the door. She watched him walk down the porch steps and turn left toward East Market Street. Then she went back to the kitchen, picked up the change purse from where she had left it the night before, and put on her coat. The corner grocer opened at 6. She had 20 minutes. She walked the 4 blocks with her hands in her coat pockets, the 47 cents in the all-change purse pressed against her hip. The morning air smelled of coal smoke and damp brick. She knew exactly what she was going to buy before she walked through the door. A tin of evaporated milk, 12 cents. A 5-pound bag of potatoes, 19 cents. A small bag of dried lima beans from the bulk bin, 11 cents. That was 42 cents. The remaining 5 cents she folded into the lining of the purse in case Friday brought a surprise she had not planned for. She carried the small paper sack home without stopping to talk to anyone. By the time the children came down the stairs at 6:30, the potatoes were already on the stove, peeled and quartered, simmering with one of the eggs cracked into the water to make it cloudy and rich. That was Thursday breakfast for the children. The 47 cents had not bought 3 days of meals. It had bought the bridging pieces that turned 3 eggs, half a bag of flour, a soft onion, dried beans, milk with a third gone, and a spoonful of bacon grease into a working system. That was the math. The afternoon was the easiest part of Thursday. The children went to school with biscuits in their pockets, 2 each, made from the same flour and the same bacon grease that had become breakfast. She baked them while the potatoes were still simmering, dropping the dough onto a hot cast iron skillet because the oven cost too much to fire for something so small. The biscuits were dense and a little dry, but they were hot when the children put them in their coat pockets, and they would still be warm at recess. She spent the morning hours washing the breakfast pans, sweeping the linoleum, and starting Thursday supper before the sun was fully up. The lima beans went into the pot first. She had pulled them out of the bag the night before and let them soak in cold water on the back of the stove, the way her aunt in Canton had taught her when she was newly married. By 8 o'clock Thursday morning, they had doubled in size and were ready to simmer. Into the pot went the beans, the rest of the potatoes she had not used for the children's breakfast, the soft yellow onion chopped fine, and one of the remaining eggs cracked directly into the water along with its shell. The shell would settle to the bottom and pull the cloudiness with it, leaving a clearer broth on top. Her grandmother had taught her that one. The whole thing simmered on the back of the stove all morning and into the afternoon, filling the kitchen with the smell of onion and starch and pork fat from the last spoonful of bacon grease she had stirred in. By the time the children came home from school at 3:30, the kitchen smelled like a real Thursday supper. She let them stand in the doorway and breathe it in before she sent them to wash up. When her husband walked through the door at 6:15, smelling of rubber and sweat, the table was set for 5. The chowder went into a deep ceramic bowl in the center, thick enough that the wooden spoon could stand up in it. She had crumbled the last of the heel of bread into the bottom of the bowl before ladling, the way poor cooks had stretched soup for 200 years, letting the bread soak up the broth and turn the meal heavier than it had any right to be. The tin of evaporated milk went into the chowder at the very end, stirred in slow until the broth turned the color of soft cream. The children would taste richness. The richness would not be there in any meaningful caloric sense, but their tongues would tell them otherwise. She served her husband first, ladling the densest portion from the bottom of the pot, where the potatoes and beans had settled. Then the children, in order of age, each getting a thick scoop of the heavy material with enough broth to coat it. She filled her own bowl last, taking what was left, which was mostly the thin liquid and the broken edges of beans that had simmered too long. She ate it standing at the counter while she sliced the second egg, hard-boiled now, into 4 pieces. 1 piece for each of the children, none for herself. She had eaten enough at the counter. Her husband did not look up from his bowl. He had been on his feet for 10 hours and would be back at the plant by 7 the next morning. He ate quickly and thanked her without saying it, the way he always had, by emptying the bowl completely. When the children were in bed and the kitchen was clean, she sat at the table by herself and took stock. The bag of flour was almost empty. Maybe a cup left if she was careful. The bacon grease jar was wiped clean. The onion was gone. The potatoes were gone. The lima beans had become Thursday supper and would not come again. The evaporated milk tin had a small pool of liquid still at the bottom, enough for 1 cup of coffee in the morning. 1 egg remained in the icebox. The milk was nearly gone. The rolled oats were untouched. The dried coffee grounds were on their 4th use. The change purse held 5 cents. Payday was 16 hours away. Her husband would be on his feet at the rubber plant by 7 in the morning, and he could not walk 11 blocks on an empty stomach. The children needed something hot in their bellies before school. She had a cup of flour, a handful of oats, the last pull of evaporated milk, 1 egg, the dregs of the milk, and a nickel folded into the lining of the purse. She turned off the kitchen light and stood for a moment in the dark. Then she sat back down at the table and started thinking. Friday morning was the hardest equation of the week. She was at the stove by 4:30, before the alarm clock in the bedroom went off, because the math required more time than usual. A cup of flour, a handful of oats, 1 egg, the last pull of evaporated milk, the dregs of the milk bottle, tired coffee grounds on their 4th use. That was the entire pantry. She started by putting the oats on to soak in the dregs of the milk and a half cup of water, letting them swell while she worked on the flour. The flour went into a bowl with a pinch of salt and the last pull of evaporated milk. She cracked the final egg into the bowl and beat it with a fork until the batter was smooth and slightly thick. Not a pancake batter, not a biscuit dough, something in between, heavy enough to hold the calories, thin enough to spread in the pan. She poured it into the hot cast iron skillet in a single round disc and let it cook on a low flame. While it set, she drained the soaked oats and stirred them with the last spoonful of bacon grease she had scraped from the bottom of the jar earlier that week, even though she had thought the jar was empty. The flour disc came out of the pan, thick and dense, the size of a dinner plate. She cut it into 4 wedges. The oats went into a single bowl, hot and slick, to be split between the children. Coffee from the 4 times used grounds. 2 pieces of the flour disc on her husband's plate. 1 piece each for the older 2 children. The youngest got the bowl of oats with a thumb of margarine she had been saving in the icebox door, behind a dish, so she would not be tempted to use it earlier in the week. She watched her husband eat. He did not say anything about the texture of the flour disc. He drank the thin coffee and emptied the plate. He picked up the lunch pail, which today held only a single biscuit from Thursday morning, hardened now, and a small jar of the last of Thursday's chowder broth. He kissed the top of her head on the way to the door. He walked out toward East Market Street at 5:45, and she watched him go from the front window. The children left for school at 7:30 with nothing in their pockets. She knew what she had to do at noon. At 11:15, she put on her coat again, picked up the change purse with the nickel still folded into the lining, and walked the 4 blocks back to the corner grocer. She did not go to the front of the store. She went to the back, where the grocer's wife kept a small wooden box on the floor by the bread shelf. Yesterday's bread, heels and broken rolls, and the ends of loaves that had been cut too thin for the front counter. The grocer's wife sold these by weight for whatever change you had, and she did not ask questions. She put the nickel on the counter. The grocer's wife filled a paper sack with what fit, 4 heels of yesterday's bread, and 3 broken pieces of a sweet roll that had been damaged in handling. The sweet roll alone would have cost 6 cents new. She walked home with the sack and put the bread in a clean dish towel in the icebox to keep it from going stale before the children came home from school. At 3:30, the children sat at the kitchen table and ate the bread with a thin smear of margarine and the last of the sweet roll pieces divided between them. They thought it was a treat. She drank hot water from a chipped cup and waited for 4 o'clock. Her husband walked through the front door at 4:15 with the pay envelope in his shirt pocket. He set it on the kitchen table without opening it and went upstairs to wash. She picked up the envelope, counted what was inside, and put on her coat for the 3rd time that day. She walked to the larger grocery on Market Street, the one with the wider shelves and the better prices. She did not buy meat. She did not buy butter. She did not buy the small box of chocolate she had seen in the front window the previous Sunday. She bought a 10-pound sack of flour, a tin of lard, a 5-pound bag of potatoes, a pound of yellow onions, a pound of dried navy beans, a pound of rolled oats, a new can of coffee, the small one, 2 tins of evaporated milk, a pound of margarine, a dozen eggs, $8.47. The remainder of the pay envelope went into the kitchen drawer beneath the dish towels, where she kept the rent money. It would be Wednesday again in 5 days. She carried the groceries home, put them away in the pantry, and started supper. In 1953, there were millions of kitchens like this one. In Akron, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit, in Cleveland, in Youngstown, in Birmingham, in St. Louis. In every industrial town and mill town and factory town in America, women were doing the same math at the same kitchen tables in the same dark hours before dawn. The math did not appear on the family budget. It did not appear in the household ledgers her husband kept in the desk drawer. It did not appear in the conversations she had with her sister on the telephone. It existed only inside her head, recalculated every morning, balanced against the changing weight of a flour bag, the temperature of an icebox, and the specific cost of a tin of evaporated milk at the corner grocer. It was the math that turned a 47-cent change purse into 3 days of meals. It was the math that turned scraps into supper. It was the math that kept her husband on his feet, her children in school, and her household upright through the worst week of every month. Every month, for years, nobody counted. Nobody saw the math. They only saw the plate.